Hello, we're back to do another tutorial. This one is making waistband carriers in the way that I like to. There's a lot of patterns out there from the Big Four and other companies that have instructions that may tell you how to do it differently. So what they do is they will sew it and then turn it inside out and then press it and then top stitch it. I will do it a different way that's a little bit easier that you may have also seen from somewhere else, but this is my preferred method of doing it, and it's just a lot easier for me. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at what we have here. Now, I cut out a sample piece of a 5 by 30 square centimeter piece, and I've marked it down the middle with a heat erasable pen, and what I do is I will fold one long side to the center on each side like so, and then we're going to press it down, and then we're going to fold it over like this so that when we're done with the whole length of the piece, we're going to have a nice pressed piece of the full length, and then we're going to show each individual part how it's done. So now here I have actually pressed each long end towards the center, and since I have that heat fadeable marker, it's no longer there. But as we can see, each short side folded into the center measures about 1 centimeter each side. So now we know where our center is, and that when we finish the next part of pressing down, we're going to fold it again this way, flush with each side so that there's no overlap. And that's a tricky thing to do sometimes when you have stretch fabrics. This, however, is a woven fabric, so I don't have too many difficulties with stretch or anything and being distorted at all from pressing. But one thing that is also key for this waistband carrier sample piece is that we don't actually need to finish off any edges. If we did, it'd be very bulky. So that kind of saves us a lot of work. So now what we're going to do is we're going to finish off the pressing part and press it all the way down the length, and again to have the centers fold in and have each edge meet. Okay, now we have pressed the center in and two of the pressed folded edges together on the long side, so you have one long open end and a closed side, and this is where your edge stitching comes into play. Now being that this is a woven fabric, it's really easy to get this accomplished, and like I said before, stretch fabrics aren't very helpful when you have some distortion, and maybe for most reasons you don't need to put waistband carriers on stretchy clothing as much. So what we now do is we need to get our sewing machine set up with an edge stitching foot or anything that has a plate to guide you so that you can keep a consistent stitch all the way down the edge so that it'll be regimental and straight. And that goes for this side and this side, because it's very important that you keep up with what is acceptable in terms of certain parts of your garment. If you've ever looked at a pair of pants, you will know that that is always the case. I've always seen on pants or jeans that your waistband carriers will have edge stitches on both sides all the way down the entire length. And so that's our next step, is to sew with a edge stitch down the edge of both sides. And as if you want to, you can make it a lot more in or right at the edge as you want. It's up to you in terms of aesthetics and style as you see fit. I usually like to keep it pretty much at the edge as possible. So yes, you set up your machine how you want, but that is the next step, which we will be doing in 1 minute. Okay, the next step in sewing your waistband carriers is to edge stitch on both sides. I'm going to start with the open end first, and then I'm going to go back down and do the other side, just so that I can keep this nice and regimentally sewed together straight. So now what I've done is I've used a contrasting colored thread so that you can see it better. Normally you wouldn't do that. You would do it the same color as a waistband, unless that's what you're going for, because some people do. So what I've done is I've used a different foot with a plate right here to keep it nice and straight and as a guide. And I've put it pretty much as close to the edge as I possibly can without sewing off and back on again. I really don't want to do that because it doesn't look very good aesthetically in the finished product. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down the entire length and then come back up the other way. Okay, now we're able to complete the last portion of how to construct a waistband from start to finish before attaching it to your project, whether it be a pair of pants or on a skirt. And these can also work on other things like purses and stuff to fit, you know, a loop through on a D-ring for your handle or whatever. But still, like, just talking about pants and skirts on a waistband on its own, this is basically how I do it. And before I go on to explain other things, I've noticed that most of the pattern companies that have waistband pieces in their projects to add to your waistband, normally I find that they make them 9.5 centimeters long out of the entire one piece that you cut them down with. So I think that that's an okay length. It might be a bit too long. I sometimes cut them at 9. But keep in mind, this also includes the seam allowance of the recommended 15 millimeters. I don't really go much longer than that because if I don't finish them properly, they'll end up being a big loop sitting on the finished product when I'm wearing it, like on a pair of pants. I don't think that looks too good. And if I sew them down, then I'm losing that area where the belt will go through that will maybe be too narrow for its width. So this is quite an adequate length to cut them at. So keep in mind that you, as a sewer on your own, you can change those ideas if you want. That's completely up to you. However, if you're following any instructions, keep in mind that your seam allowance is included in this length. So after sewing the edges of each side and knowing that it's pretty much standard on both sides, be it a little bit different on one side than the other, cut them down and away you go. So basically that really concludes how we do a waistband carrier for pretty much any project that includes a waistband, and on a purse or a handbag that you need to sew on to attach a D-ring or a circle ring to attach a handle onto it, then that's fine too. It all works the same. And I find that once this is done, it's kind of a stronger construction. I tend to think that if I did it the other way, where I'd sew it down right sides together and then turned them outside like I would with a spaghetti strap on a dress, it's too much work, I guess, to try and do it that way if you want. But I find it to be a little frustrating, and the look in the end will be the same. I just like to do it this way because it's a lot faster and a little bit more efficient time-wise. That's basically it. So if you find that this tutorial has helped, let me know, and we'll see you in the next tutorial. Bye-bye.